AM 1050, News Talk KCAA.
Welcome to Safe Money Talk with Rick Liuag. Rick is a safe money specialist, primarily serving Southern California, but he's sought after nationally for his expertise in helping people secure their retirements. Mr. Liuag is a licensed insurance professional in the state of California and specializes in working with business owners, people who are near retirement, or those who have already retired with wealth management, income planning, and asset protection strategies. And now, here to talk to you about safe money and retirement, your host, Rick Liuag.
Hello again and welcome to Safe Money Talk with Rick Liuag. I am your host, Rick Liuag, and it's Tuesday evening again. We've got a lot to talk about. You're going to get the straight talk here that you're probably not going to hear from your CPA, your certified financial planner, or your attorney. So what are we going to talk about in today's show? It would not be a Safe Money Talk show if we didn't talk about Obamacare. And one of the main reasons why I want to start off the show with Obamacare is because open enrollment starts here pretty soon. In fact, open enrollment started last week for seniors, for Medicare. So those of you that are out there that are over 65, maybe this is your first go around for Medicare, you're getting a first taste of applying for your Medicare coverage. For those of you that are not 65, starting November 1st, actually I think it's going to be the next day, November 2nd, that you can actually start applying for your 2016 Obamacare plan. And here's what you're going to find. You're going to find higher costs, you're going to find shrinking networks, and you're going to find doctors and hospitals that you wanted to go see or that you were expecting to be on the network to be gone. And that's one of the things that we had talk about every single show, and we'd predicted several years ago that was going to be happening as a result of this. But what I want to talk about in this first segment is what to expect, what you can do to increase coverage and decrease the risk to your assets, including your retirement savings, your home, and any assets that you have. Because quite frankly, the days of you being 65, getting Medicare, then getting a supplement, and protecting your assets from a catastrophic medical expense, that was prior to 2013. That's no longer the case anymore. In fact, as we've talked about in previous shows, Obamacare poses one of the greatest risks to seniors' retirement savings that are out there. Much greater risk than a stock market crash or a real estate crash or a dollar crashing. And here's why. It's the only risk to a senior's retirement savings that could literally wipe it out almost overnight. And we've talked about this, and I want to reemphasize it during this show. I know Joe's been asking me tons of questions about this today because we've been talking about health insurance. And again, this is not a political or a health insurance show. We talk about how to protect your money. And part of protecting your assets is avoiding a catastrophic medical expense. That's why you have health insurance. That's why you have Medicare. That's why you have life insurance, to avoid a catastrophic expense. And this time of year is when it's on everybody's mind. They're going to start applying for their Medicare coverage. They're going to start applying for their Obamacare coverage, either online or from an agent directly face-to-face or in their office. So here's the number one thing that you need to look at when you are applying for your Medicare plan or your health insurance this year. It used to be what it cost and what the deductible was and what the benefits were. That's no longer the case. The number one thing that you want to look at when you're evaluating these health plans are the doctors and hospitals that you want to use and see on that network. That's the number one thing to look at when you're evaluating health insurance, either via Medicare, Medicare Advantage, or an Obamacare plan, or a plan at your group that your employer's offering. Are the doctors and hospitals that I want to see on that network? And it's even more crucial if you're a senior on Medicare. Everybody's heard stories of women getting breast cancer and then losing their job or leaving their job because they were in treatment or in recovery and they had to have surgery and they were going through chemo or radiation. And everybody's heard the horror stories of women or even men with prostate cancer or some form of colon cancer that they would get really sick. They had health insurance. They lost their coverage because they lost their job. They went on COBRA. They couldn't afford the COBRA anymore because the COBRA was 2 and 3 times what their health insurance premiums were prior, and they lost access to the doctors and hospitals that they wanted to go see. They died Many of them declared bankruptcy before they died because they had to burn through their savings. Well, prior to 2014, that wouldn't happen to a senior on Medicare that had a Medicare supplement. Just wasn't going to happen. Almost every doctor and hospital accepted Medicare. The 20% that Medicare didn't cover would be picked up by a Medicare supplement, and the odds of a senior on Medicare having a catastrophic medical expense that caused a bankruptcy were literally slim to none. That probably wasn't going to happen. But that's no longer the case. After 2014, January 1st, 2014, the chances of a medical or a bankruptcy resulting from a catastrophic medical expense for a senior on Medicare is just as good as for folks under 65. 60% of the bankruptcies in the United States are caused by catastrophic medical expenses. 60% of all bankruptcies. The sad thing about that statistic is 75% of those bankruptcies, those folks started out when they got sick with medical insurance, health insurance. We didn't hear that about seniors, but now Joe's shaking his head. Yeah, we're going to start hearing more and more seniors as a result of this new law having to declare bankruptcy because fewer and fewer doctors and hospitals accepting Medicare or the Obamacare plans, and here's why. Written into the new law is about $700 billion worth of reimbursement reductions over a 10-year period. What does that mean? What it means is the doctors and hospitals that treat Medicare patients are taking a pay cut as a result of the Affordable Care Act. They are getting reimbursed by the government less to treat Medicare patients. They're taking a pay cut. So just imagine Stater Brothers or a grocery store taking a pay cut when their expenses are going up. So their groceries, they have to charge less for their groceries when their health insurance costs, their gasoline costs for their trucks, their electricity costs are skyrocketing, going up. That's exactly what's happening in the medical industry, is that doctors and hospitals who traditionally treat Medicare patients are now being forced to take a pay cut as a result of the Obamacare reimbursement reductions. This means that fewer and fewer doctors and hospitals over the coming years are going to be able to afford economically to treat Medicare patients. We're already starting to see this, Joe. We're already starting to see that there are doctors and hospitals that are starting to say, well, we're not getting draconian enough that we're going to stop seeing Medicare patients altogether. It hasn't gotten to that degree yet. However, there are doctors, hospitals, and clinics, especially out in the Lancaster and high desert area, that are now starting to say, we are no longer accepting any new Medicare patients. And that should be scary to those of us that are close to Medicare age. I'm 5 years away from Medicare age. That means when I turn 65, Medicare is going to be even less beneficial to me than it is today, because as those reimbursements kick in, fewer and fewer of the doctors and hospitals that I want to access if I get really, really sick will I be able to see on either my Medicare Advantage or my Medicare plan. Those of you that are not 65, you might think that you're immune from this, that this won't impact you because you're 10 or 15 or 20 years away from Obamacare, from Medicare. But I've got all these on this desk here in the studio. I've got all these articles in front of me. Blue Cross, Aetna, United, Humana flee Obamacare exchanges. In Alaska, 3 different insurance companies have announced that they are leaving Alaska's individual health insurance plan market. So what we're starting to see in the 3rd year of Obamacare is we're starting to see what we predicted in 2012 and 2013, is that the health insurance companies are saying, heck with it. If you're not allowing us to have rate increases and you're going to cause us to get bigger networks, we're just going to pull out of California. We're just going to pull out of that state, and that's going to leave all of us with fewer and fewer choices for health insurance coverage, companies, and health insurance providers. And that's dangerous. If you're perfectly healthy and you don't get sick, no problem. But not only are there fewer and fewer providers, these plans are a lot worse than the plans were 3 and 4 years ago. They have holes in them. And here, Obamacare was supposed to make health insurance better. Those of us that have experience in the insurance industry, and health insurance in particular, will tell you these plans today are not nearly as good overall as they were in from 2000 2005 to 2010, let's say. Those were good plans. You could get a really good PPO plan with a low deductible that almost every doctor and hospital in California would accept. Those days are gone. So what do I do, Rick? What do I do to protect my family? What do I do especially to protect my health and protect my money? Well, number one, make sure that the doctor and hospital that you want to go see is part of that network. Number two, the second thing that you're going to need to do going forward, and that whether you're a senior on Medicare or whether you have group health insurance at your job, or whether you're responsible for your own family's health insurance at home, you pay for your own, the most important thing I think you can do, besides making sure that the doctors and hospitals you want are on that network, is you're going to have to patch up the holes in those crappy Obamacare plans. And what I mean by patching up the holes is those of us that have sold health insurance and have recommended health insurance in the past. I don't do much health insurance these days. I advise on it, but I don't actually offer it very much in my practice. Is what we found is that what we mean by patching up holes is the deductibles. Where are all the expense? For those of us that are advising clients, when you look at any kind of coverage, I don't care whether it's life insurance or health insurance or whatever, you have to look at the holes. Where are the holes in these plans that expose me to more out-of-pocket money? What these new Obamacare plans, whether they're Medicare or whether they're health insurance, general health insurance, what they are doing now is simply transferring the cost from the health insurance company, whether it's the government via Medicare or the health insurance company. They're transferring the cost and the risk from them to you. They're transferring the risk via higher deductibles, higher copays, smaller networks, which means if you get really sick or somebody in your family gets really sick, you're going to be more financially exposed, even though you're paying higher premiums, even though these are the new qualified Obamacare plans. You're exposed to much greater out-of-pocket risk if you get sick or have a catastrophic illness or terminal illness. You're exposed to a lot of money. You're exposed to a lot of money. So what we advise as asset protection advisors, whatever you want to call us, that's just a fancy way of saying we tell people how to protect their money, is you've got to look for supplemental plans that patch up those holes. More than ever, these plans have been around for 50 years, some of them, okay? But more than ever, these little supplemental ancillary plans that you can get, like cancer plans, like what are called critical illness plans, accident plans, accident and injury plans. These are plans that are very inexpensive, typically less than $100 a month for a family. You can get these little supplemental plans that will cover the deductible, that will pay the out-of-pocket maximum if you incur a medical expense due to an accident or injury. Let me give you an example. Junior falls off the skateboard, breaks his arm. You take him into the emergency room. You've got an Obamacare plan with an $8,000 deductible. Well, $8,000. Even though you've got health insurance, you're still looking at an $8,000 cost. You can get a little inexpensive accident plan, very, very reasonable, that will pay you up to $10,000 for any expense incurred due to an accident or injury. If you're under 55 or 60, the odds are that somebody in your family is going to incur a medical expense. It's 4 times greater that you're going to incur that medical expense due to an injury versus an illness. Now, if you're like me, over 55, it's a 50-50 toss-up. We're either going to have a stroke or a heart attack or cancer, or we're going to get hurt in an accident. So now, here's what you do. You find your doctors and hospitals, make sure they're in the network. Number 2, you patch up those holes in those deductibles, the copays, and out-of-pocket maximums with little supplemental plans that you can get. They're very inexpensive. If you want to call me and ask me about them, that's 800-274-3891. If you've got any Obamacare stories and you want to tell us about them, or if you've got any questions, call us locally at 909-888-5222, or if you're out of the 909 area code, call me at 888-909-1050, and you can ask me any question tonight live on the radio. This is Rick Liuag with Safe Money Talk, KCAA 1050 AM. We'll be right back.
Never before has there been a piece of legislation that impacts so many Americans in so many ways as the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. This ponderous bill is now the law of the land, yet many of us do not yet fully understand how it impacts our health care, our finances, even our retirement. It's hard to get past all the political rhetoric and grandstanding politicians and learn the truth about Obamacare. That's why Rick wants to offer you his free Obamacare Survival Kit. This kit contains information you need right now to protect your business and retirement from the effects of Obamacare. There are no strings attached, and you have everything to gain and nothing to lose by calling Rick's toll-free number right now and reserving your copy. That's 1-800-284-3887. Your survival kit is waiting for you now at 1-800-284-3887. That's 1-800-284-3887.
Attention business owners, if you're concerned about the financial impact of Obamacare on your business, if higher health insurance rates will have a devastating impact on your bottom line, then you need to write down this number right now, 1-800-284-3895. We'll rush you a free copy of our popular Obamacare Survival Kit. This kit will help you discover ways you can lessen the impact of Obamacare on your business. Reserve your copy. Again, that's 1-800-284-3895.
Welcome back to Safe Money Talk with Rick Liuag. I am your host, Rick Liuag, out of the KCAA 1050 AM studio here in San Bernardino. And for those of you that want to call in, ask me any questions, local number is 909-888-5222. And out of the 909 area code, if you want to ask me any questions or make any comments, 888-909-1050. The other day I was sitting in, I think it was a sandwich shop, and I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you, and I'm a little bit remiss in telling you that sitting across from me was a guy that was probably about 400 pounds. I mean, he was 450 pounds, and it wasn't a sandwich shop. It was like a fast food joint, and he had all this food piled up, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, you are just a walking time bomb. Don't you see what he had to be in denial? And it's kind of human nature is such that if we see somebody like that, we think, oh my God, did he do it? How did he do it to himself? Why is he doing it to himself? We see people smoking and they're coughing, hack, 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 and they're just, that commercial with that lady, Joe, with the hole in her throat. And you think, oh my God, why are they doing that to themselves? Or people that are riding on motorcycles recklessly with no helmet. And you're thinking, what in the world are they thinking? And sometimes I am forced to think the same way about people that I talk to when I meet with them and I ask them, why in the world is your money, your retirement savings, your precious hard-earned retirement savings, why is it there where you could lose it? And they don't really have a really sound answer. It's somebody told me to put it there, or I transferred it from my 401k, or that's where it was when I worked at my job, and then when I transferred it from my 401k to my IRA. And I have to educate them on how much risk they are exposed to. Now, I do have to say this. If you're somebody out there, and I know Joe's not like this because we've talked about this, if you're somebody out there and you think everything's going honky-dory and that our friends in Washington, D.C. are doing a good job, if you think our friends in Sacramento are doing a hell of a good job and taking really good care of the economy, if you think that the global economy is on the upward rise and everything is running smoothly, and you think that capitalism is just in great shape, then by all means, leave your money in a stock mutual fund, because it's going to grow. And if you believe that and it's really going to happen, then your money is probably in the right place. But if you're kind of like me, if you're like me and others that I talk to that think that the knuckleheads in Washington are completely out of control, they don't know what they're doing, they can't get this economy under any kind of control, that there's worse knuckleheads in Sacramento that are making it worse for business owners here in California than anywhere else in the country almost. If you have your eyes open, if you're paying any bit of attention to China or the national debt, all of these are minefields. These are landmines that are out there ready for you to step on. We could have disaster at any moment. I get picked on a lot by people that say that, Rick, you are just trying to scare people, that you're just trying to be Chicken Little and you're trying to get listeners and get clients by scaring people. No, I'm a realist, and I look, and I've worked and lived. I'm going to be 60 years old next year. I have worked through 4 major stock market crashes, 4 major ones, and I have seen what builds up to those. And I've also learned in those 60 years that human beings don't learn from their mistakes, that history absolutely repeats itself. It doesn't matter that people were jumping out of the buildings in 1929 because they lost everything. It doesn't really matter to folks today in 2015 that there were people that lost 40 to 50% of their assets in a stock market crash and a financial meltdown in 2008 and 2009. People forget that. They absolutely forget that. And it's okay if you think that way if you're 30 years old, if you're 40 years old even, because you have something on your side working for you that I don't have, and that is time. I can't afford at my age to make any more mistakes. I can't afford to take a 30 or 40% hit out of my IRA or my 401k. So I have sacrosanct money that I can't lose under any circumstance. Here's one of the biggest mistakes that I see seniors making today. There are 3 phases of wealth accumulation, okay? 3 phases of your wealth. It's a life cycle. The first phase is the accumulation stage. That's when you're working and you're earning money. That's when you're stashing money away. That's a long period of time, usually between 20 and 25 to 65. That's your accumulation stage. You can be a lot more aggressive because you've got time working on your side. You're stashing money away, hopefully tax deferred, so Uncle Sam's keeping his paws off of it. And any variation in the stock market or whatever market you're invested in, you've got something working in your favor, which is time, and you're not taking money out. The next phase of your wealth accumulation is called the distribution phase. That's when you've taken what you've earned and now you're going to stop working and you're going to start living off of it. And that's what many of these listeners, if you're driving home today and you're listening and you're over 65, you're in your distribution stage. You're hopefully living off Social Security and a retirement plan and maybe a pension plan. And what you're trying to do now is you're trying to preserve what you've accumulated. And the biggest mistake that I see people make after they retire is they're using the same financial tools that they used for accumulation for distribution. That's a recipe for disaster. If you think that you're immune from any market crashes or any financial meltdown because you're on a pension, I'm going to tell you something. Go to a website called pensionsunami.com. It's very few people know about it, and you are going to be shocked to learn how many private pensions, corporate pensions are underfunded and at risk, and how many public pensions are underfunded and at risk. And we are going to hear over the next few years more and more horror stories about pensions being cut dramatically. And in fact, you should know something. And if you don't, you're going to learn it right now. In 2014, the federal government passed a law that impacts almost every single employee in the United States. It passed a law that allows companies to legally decrease the pension amounts promised to both future and current retirees. So our friends in Washington, D.C. passed a law that said these companies, if they find themselves in a bind, they can reduce pension contributions. So if you think that your pension is set, cast in concrete, and it's not at risk because it's coming from this company or that company, you need to rethink that, okay? I talk to people every single week who say to me, well, if I invest here and I invest there, I can get a better return than what you're talking about with all those different products, Rick. But I'm going to tell you something. I used to be a stockbroker, and I'm going to say this at the risk of being picked on even more than I get picked on, is the stock market is rigged against most of us. It has been for years. When I worked in the bank and we were trained by the bankers, there was an old saying that sheep get slaughtered. Sheep get slaughtered. And something happened in 1974 that made the rich get even richer and the middle class think that they were going to get rich. And that was a bill called ERISA. ERISA. I believe it stands for the Employee Retirement Income and Savings Act. And what it did basically is said this. It allowed companies to change their retirement pension plans from what's called a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. And it was passed by Gerald Ford. When I was in high school, he passed this bill. It meant nothing to me then, and it really wouldn't impact me for 45 years later. But it does impact me now. And here's what it said. those folks that are my father's age, my father and mother in their mid-80s now, when they went to work, they worked for a company that had what's called a defined benefit plan. That the company would then, after 30 or 20 or 30 years, they would calculate income multiplied by amount of years worked, and that would be your pension for the rest of your life. You could either take the pension to come into you, and then when you died it stopped, or you could take less, and when you died it would go to your spouse. And that was called a defined benefit. And most municipalities, most state and federal government employees are on a defined benefit plan. But in 1974, the government passed a law called ERISA that let companies now change from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Most of us employees at the time, we had no clue what was going on. We couldn't connect the dots. But what it really said was this. In retrospect, in hindsight, this is what it did. Every employee at that time still thought that they were going to get a retirement. They were working towards a defined benefit plan, but the employer didn't educate these folks. And basically what ERISA did was it transferred the responsibility of saving for your retirement from the company to you through what's called a 401k. We've all heard of 401ks, but here's what happened. Most people didn't fund their 401k. And if they did fund it, a family emergency came up and then they'd have to snatch out the money. So now there is an epidemic of people that don't have enough to retire on because they didn't fund it. And it's because of ERISA. But here's something else that happened with ERISA, and this helped today's stock market get even more rigged to those of us that aren't in the inner circle, in the in crowd, is when we funded our 401k, if we did, think back and think now. You don't really get many choices. Most of it is in a stock fund, in a mutual fund, right? When you get to pick whatever you want to invest your 401k in, think about it. Where's it going? It's going to Wall Street. So there's this huge infusion of money into the stock market starting in 1974. Well, that made the bankers and Wall Street even richer, because here's what I want you to hear. For those of you out there that have played poker, there is a saying that says, if you've been sitting at the poker table for 30 minutes and you can't recognize who the sucker is you. And I want to say this, if you are investing your retirement savings and a lion's share of it is in a mutual fund, a stock mutual fund or a bond mutual fund, you're the sucker at the table, because the game is rigged against us. And to prove that to you, let me ask you a quick question. In 2008, when you lost 30 to 40% of your value in your 401k, did the government make up your loss like they made up the bankers' loss and the big banks on Wall Street's loss? No, they didn't. They didn't make up your loss. They didn't make up my loss. Okay, so the game is rigged with things like high frequency trading and all that kind of high tech stuff. Hedge funds. It all comes back to me. One of my favorite movies about finance is Wall Street with Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas he was Gordon Gekko and he won the Academy Award. There's a scene where they're making fun of Bud Fox. That's Charlie Sheen's character, because he would sit for hours and read these charts, and he would do these little software programs, and he would chart out what the stock was going to do, and he'd go back to Gordon and he'd say, my chart tells me this, and Gekko looked at him and he said, it's got nothing to do with your charts. It's got to do with information. And I will tell you this because I know firsthand, I was on the inside. There's only two things that move the stock market, and that's greed and fear. And the only way that people make money in the stock market consistently is that they know something or they're on the inside. Hedge fund managers, they don't use charts. They have analysts and they use charts to some degree, but hedge fund managers buy companies so they get the inside information on that company, and it's legal inside information. Hedge fund managers are on the inside, so the game is rigged for them in their benefit. Us everyday investors that are investing through a mutual fund, we're just like throwing a piece of paper or a piece of wood into a river. We're just going along with the flow. And what you can do today is you can literally benefit from the same information that the hedge fund managers have. If you want to invest in the stock market, there are ways to do it that you don't have to put all your money at risk. And we talked about one last week, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, and that's a fixed indexed annuity. And whenever I mention that word, I see people cringe. It's like, oh my God, you're going to talk about that again? It's one of the only vehicles that I could think of right now that you can safely benefit from a rising stock market and not have any money at risk at all if the stock market goes down. So if you want to learn more about that, I've got the Obamacare Survival Kit that'll talk a little bit more about fixed index annuities. You can just go to www.myobamacaresurvivalkit.com and download, just give us a call or download it from there. Joe's telling me we've got to take a break. I've got a little surprise for you when we come back. Something a little bit off finance. This is Rick Liuag at Safe Money Talk, KCAA 1050 AM. We'll be right back.
If you're a senior on Medicare or are about to enroll in Medicare, you need to pay close attention to this. Many seniors are making mistakes with their money from which they will never recover, simply because they don't understand how Obamacare will affect them in retirement. For a limited time, we're offering a free Obamacare Survival Kit containing information you must know in order to protect your retirement. Call toll-free right now to reserve your copy. 1-800-284-3895. Again, that's 800-284-3895.
Welcome back. This is Rick Liuag, and you're listening to Safe Money Talk. I want to kind of finish off on this subject that we did before the break, talking about how the stock market is rigged against us. I mean, it sounds it sounds kind of like a conspiracy theory, but I've seen it throughout the years. What I've seen firsthand is the stock market as a whole. It was originally designed as an effective way for companies to raise the needed capital that they needed to grow and expand, and investors could profit when these companies would grow and make profits, and everybody would benefit. It's evolved into something different throughout the years, absolutely, and it can't be denied. The stock market today is designed to transfer money. And it's basically designed to transfer your money to somebody else. And that somebody else would be Wall Street or Washington via taxes. And that's what the stock market is designed to do. Now, granted, I will tell you this, that all of us over the last 4 years have made money in a mutual fund or a stock market because of the bull market. That bull market has been around for one really main reason, in my opinion, is very, very low interest rates, which means that money's been cheap, so people could take money, borrow it, especially hedge fund managers. They could borrow it at almost zero interest, speculate with it, and any return that they got, whether it was 2, 3, 4%, would be huge profits. But think about this. If it's been low interest rates that have been stimulating the stock market, what's going to happen when interest rates do go up? How long do you think they can stay at zero? What's going to happen to you and your money if interest rates go up? Are you protected? Where's the money at? I've talked to people all over the country that tell me, well, Rick, I did lose 40% in my 401k back in 2008, but it came back. By 2012, it was all back, and now I've made money. And I said, yeah, but if you were over 65, that wouldn't have happened. And here's why. And this is, before we get to my guest, and we're going to talk about something completely different, this is a message that I want everybody to hear, especially if you're over 65 and you're not working anymore. Any losses that you're going to incur in any future market declines or market meltdowns, any losses that you're going to incur, those are probably going to be gone forever. You'll probably never make those up. And here's why. I'm going to stick my neck out on the line saying this, is that you're not contributing to your 401k anymore. You're not working anymore. When you made up that money over the last few years, the chances are pretty good you were still working. It was pre-retirement. So you were still contributing to your 401k or your IRA every single year religiously, and you weren't taking any money out of it. Well, now that you're over 65, you may even be 70 and a half. If the market loses 40% and you've then got to take out your 3 or 4% for required minimum distributions, that's a 43% loss. You got to make almost 70% to recoup that money. Well, what happens the next year if you're taking out your RMDs again? and it goes down again. So I'm going to predict that if you're over 65 and there's another 2008 crash, that money's probably going to be gone. You're never going to live to see it recouped because of the fact that you're not rebuilding it, replenishing it by contributing. So, call in, give me a call, 800-274-3891. I've got solutions for you. I can answer your questions on this one very topic, especially the stock market, because everybody's looking at it and saying, oh my God, it's made tons of money for me, and I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to wait until it starts going down. That might be too late. One of our jobs as financial advisors is to help clients find money. And I just found some money for myself, and it was based on my neighbor's recommendation. And my neighbor found about $550 to $600 a month. I was telling Joe about it when we got here. And one of the things that we do with business owners is we help them find money by blowing up their groups and sending their employees to an individual plan, and we find them sometimes $20,000 and $30,000 a month for business owners, and that helps them fund their retirement savings because they didn't have a way to fund their retirement plans. Well, those of us that are close to retirement, or seniors, all of us that are seniors, we're always looking for ways to cut costs, increase income, and stash more away. Well, I've got to talk about this because it saved us money, but it really saved my neighbor a heap of dough. And what he did is he put solar panels on his house. And my neighbor was spending, he told me, between $550 and $600 a month on electricity. And he put up solar panels, and his biggest bill over the last 4 months was $1.80. And he's been running his air conditioner all day, every day. So we did it. And it dramatically dropped our power bill. And I thought, gosh, how many people don't know about this or are too confused? So what I did is I asked an old friend of mine, Doug Jones, who's a specialist in this, and we've got him online. Doug, we've got some time here. I want to talk to you about solar if you're on. Are you with us, Doug?
I'm here, Rick. Can you hear me?
Mr. Jones, how are you up there in Oregon? You don't have much sun in Oregon. I know. I've been there.
Oh, we have lots of sun where I live in Oregon. I live on the eastern side of the mountains. The mountains stop all that rain over on the western side.
All right. Now you and I talked about this earlier in the week. That's a windfall for my neighbor, Pete and Delia. They just found $550 a month. Doug, why isn't everybody that owns a house, why wouldn't they do solar? Tell me about some of the questions that you're getting. We did some research on it, but I'm still by no means an expert, but I got to tell you, it's found money for us.
Well, it is. And, Rick, the really exciting thing about the savings is not the monthly savings in the first year. It's the compound savings over time, because when you get a solar electric system installed, you're going to contract with whoever is going to own that. You could buy it, and you would own it, or you could have it for free, and somebody else would own it. You would loan them your roof and just buy the electricity from it. But either way, you are never going to have an electrical rate increase for the whole 25-year life of that contract.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
In my opinion, Doug, because when Stephanie and I were evaluating this, my wife's very, very conservative. She's the kind that when we go on a cruise, she wants to do her homework a year and a half in advance. Okay, so she does all of her homework on this stuff. And one thing that I said to Stephanie was this. I said, Steph, if you believe that power is, like I do, that power is going to do nothing but increase in cost because of these knuckleheads in Sacramento and all the green stuff, I believe that within 2 to 5 years, power is going to be a lot more expensive than it is now. Let's do it, Stephanie. Do you agree with me, Doug, that power is not going to do anything but go up in cost?
Not only will it be more expensive in real dollars, but it'll be way more expensive in nominal dollars because of everything you've been talking about.
Right.
The government is creating all this money to try to solve the problem, which doesn't solve the problem, but it certainly means the dollars will be worth less in the future. So we have both the actual increasing real cost of getting coal and gas out of the ground and transported and burned, but we also have the depreciating dollar, and solar protects against both of those.
Well, it's, this is a financial show, and the main reason why we're talking about this is because you can basically protect your out-of-pocket cost. I mean, I'd love to be able to do something like this with gasoline, and change the amount that we spend on gas.
If you could have gotten a contract on gasoline, 15, 20 years ago at $1 a gallon.
Right.
And you would never have to pay more than $1 a gallon for the next 25 years.
That's
what we have today with solar, And what most people don't know, Rick, and I don't know why, because there's a lot of advertising and a lot of telemarketers and everything else going on, but most people still that I talk to today are not aware that they can have solar with no out-of-pocket cost at all, just immediate savings, because they can either buy it if they want to own it and have the tax credit. They can buy it with zero-down financing, or if they don't care about owning it, they can have an investor own it that will put that power plant on their roof. Those solar panels are a power plant, and so they'll loan them the roof and just contract to buy the electricity at about half or less what they're currently paying, but the rate's locked in. So not only are they saving some money this year, they're saving tens of thousands of dollars over 25 years. When you look at the average 6% or so increase of annually in California.
And you hit on something that caused us to postpone solar for probably what I think was through the summer, at least, Doug, through the summer, is that we had so many choices. We had to, and Stephanie's got a master's degree, and I've got a college degree. We're educated people, Doug, and we still had to weather through the minutia and decide which was the best way to go, because there's so many choices, and it cost us probably a lot of money, Doug, over the summer, because our bills were running like $500 and $600 a month running the air conditioner when it's 100 degrees in Corona. But the bottom line is this: there's almost guaranteed found savings in this scenario, whichever way you choose to go. Isn't it just found money for people with solar now?
Yeah, it really is.
All right.
Because we will, and I'm sure other companies are the same, but our company, Unison Solar, will not install we won't even sign a contract unless we can save the homeowner at least 20% this year, right now. And that's after installing it for free. By the way, there's no maintenance costs. First of all, there's very little maintenance on solar because there's no moving parts. But there are a few pieces of equipment, and so there's no maintenance, no warranty. All of that is paid for, either in the zero-down financing or in the lease or in the PPA. There's really only three ways to buy it. And what I recommend to people is, obviously, you can do some homework and should, but we have people whose business is designing solar systems for homeowners, and we'll do a free solar savings analysis. Costs people absolutely nothing. And those guys are trained to ask the right questions to identify which is the right system for you based on, do you have a tax liability? Can you use the tax credit or not? Or would it be better to use the tax credit to get a lower rate on solar by letting the investor keep the tax credit? Yeah. And so that really depends on your tax situation. And then also how long you expect to hold the house. By the way, one of the common myths is if you're going to sell the house soon, then you shouldn't put in solar. That's totally the opposite of the reality, because the Berkeley lab, which is a part of the Department of Energy, Lawrence Livermore Labs, did a study of 20,000 transactions in which the home had solar, and they found that the average increase in value was about $10,000 for a 5 kilowatt solar system.
Well, of course,
yeah,
it just makes sense.
So, and it makes sense because if you had two tract houses identical right next to each other, one had solar and had no cost of electricity, and the other had a $200 or $300 a month cost of electricity, obviously there's a value to that operating cost savings.
Doug, I don't need hooked on math to tell me that a house with $1.80 a month power bill, who's got a big pool and Pete's pumping that pool all the time and he's running his air conditioner at 72 degrees. I don't need hooked on math to tell me I'd rather buy the house with $1.80 power bill than the one with $600 a month. Doug, Joe, my engineer, has a question for you. He's been asking me about this solar stuff. Yeah.
One thing that me and my girlfriend were talking about was that, we may be moving in the next 2 years. Isn't it possible can we purchase panels and can't we just take it with us to our next house?
Yes, actually, I'm glad you asked that, because you could. There's a clause in all of our contracts, I assume most companies' contracts, where you have a one-time on and off for free. Because even if you stay there, chances are in a 25-year time frame, you're going to want to repair the roof, right? So we'll come out as part of the whole deal. We'll come out one time, take the panels off, put them back on for free. If you move, we'll put them back on your new house for free.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Also, if the buyer wants the solar system because of the savings we just talked about, it's a very simple one-page document to transfer that contract to them. It's done all the time. It's a piece of cake.
And Doug, I know you've got a background in finance like financial advice too. If a senior can save $200 or $300 a month on a power bill, they can apply that towards their life insurance with living benefits, and that accelerated death benefit, that life insurance policy that we always talk about to battle Obamacare and some of the negative impacts of that. That's where they can find the money for this. So back to the
oh my
the
gosh,
whole
Rick! As you know, I came from the life insurance industry as well. And about 2 years ago, these full living benefits came in that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if people don't have an insurance contract with full living benefits, they certainly need to get that because it's the new modern kind of life insurance. Yeah. But they can definitely use that solar savings to create, a policy with living benefits. And if they're using your other strategies, they can also build up an asset there from which they can draw tax-free income later. And obviously that's your bailiwick, Rick, so I'll let you talk about that. But I'm very well aware of that. And anytime people can save money, especially we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars over the life of a solar contract, obviously if they invest that wisely rather than blowing it, then that can compound for them in very big ways going downstream.
Absolutely. Doug, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been a wealth of information. It's been an experience for me going through the process, and I wanted to talk about it because of the savings. We've got to run. We got 1 minute left. I'm going to wrap it up. Doug, take care. God bless, and thanks for participating. Thanks for being a guest.
Ray, thanks for having me.
Take care.
It.
That was great. It's been a windfall for my neighbor and me and everybody I know that's got it. So if you're looking to save money and use that to whatever, invest or supplement your income, it's a great alternative. We've got just a few seconds left. I want to wrap up, and I want to just recap what we talked about in today's show. We started off talking about Obamacare and what you need to do during open enrollment. Make sure your doctors and hospitals are in the network. Find supplemental plans like cancer plans, accident plans, and critical illness plans to patch up the holes. We talked about how the stock market's rigged against you, and call me at 800-274-3891, and I'll give you some advice on how to protect yourself from that. And then we had a great guest, Doug Jones, came on and talked about how you can free up some cash by saving money. Solar's very misunderstood, but I got to tell you, it's worked for me and my neighbor. Next week, we got an awful lot to talk about next week. Don't miss it. Tell your friends and relatives to join us here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 o'clock. KCA 81050. This is Rick Liuag at Safe Money Talk signing off. Take care. Have a great week.